Happy Saturday, everyone. It is a special Saturday episode of The Story I'm Telling Myself with my outstanding friend and favorite travel companion, Susan LaPlaine Miller. And we are so excited that you are with us today. So, you know the drill. I love having you in the comments. I love hearing from you. So, you need to come tell us that you're here. Say hello to everyone and say hello to our guest, Susan. Susan, tell everybody who you are.
Hello, I'm Susan LaPlaine Miller. I'm a lot of things, but I'll start with youngest of 6, because that's where I came from, mother of 4, and a founder of a LLC where I do strategic partnerships. And then I also helped found a breast cancer nonprofit called My Density Matters. So I'm also a poet and a speaker, and I'm kind of whatever I want to be. And I think that's what we all should be, is whatever we want to be.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I do love your poetry.
Oh,
And
thank you.
and you're a very good photographer. So when you put the photography and the poetry together, it's pretty darn amazing. And if you want to see some of that, piecesofi.com, piecesofi.com. It's in the comments. That is where you're going to find Susan. I'm going to give you her LinkedIn a little bit later, but right now, like, you can find everything you need to find out about Susan at her website. So you love celebrating International Women's Day, and you have a big promotional thing that you've put together to celebrate, which today is International Women's Day.
Yay.
And as we were talking about this episode about abandoning ourselves, we felt like this was a really good time to have this conversation. So I'm just going to let you walk us into the backstory a little bit about how you came to this realization that perhaps the person that kept abandoning you most frequently was yourself.
Okay. Yes. That's goes back years, but we all have things in our life, and how we respond to trauma. We all have trauma, whether we want to admit it or not. How we respond is, purely subjective. You can respond one way, your sibling could respond a completely different way, and your friends likewise. So for me, a lot of things happened when I was young. And my trauma response, which I'm realizing my trauma response, was to be a fixer and to always have everything done right. Don't get in trouble. You can do stuff that gets in trouble, but just don't get caught. And, just, do well in school, do well, do good, be kind, but don't get in trouble.
Gosh,
And
I have to tell you that really resonates with me. My parents got divorced when I was in high school, but they had a very contentious marriage my entire childhood. And I felt like I learned that lesson very early in life, to just sort of, just keep it clean, don't get into too much trouble, all of those kinds of things. And you can be a stabilizer in
be
this chaos.
Yes, my trauma, when things are crazy, I don't like when little things go wrong, I get more upset. But when there's something really big happening, cool, calm, listen, observe, be prepared. It
Yeah, I
serves
mean, I
me
still to
well.
this day, I don't like drama. And that is, and it is good to be us in, like, really extreme urgent situations. Some that when you need cooler heads to prevail, you can call on Susan or I. Like, we're going to be those people that we're going to that feelings. Who needs feelings right now? We're going to fix some shit. Like, that's exactly what we're up to. Feelings are just going to get in the way. Go away. We're just not paying any attention to those.
There's a
So
time to feel and a time to do.
there is a time to feel and a time to do. I'm going to type that up right now. We're going to put this in the notes. But yes, so come on, guys, don't leave Susan and I hanging. We cannot be the only 2 women on the planet that have fallen into this trap. And I bet there are a few men that are in there with us. So please continue on, Susan. I just had to tell you, girl, you're not alone. This really resonates with me.
Yes, and I say I started with youngest of 6 because my sister's the oldest. I have 4 brothers and then me. So I say I was kind of raised by wolves. So I was used to a little rough and tumble and that kind of thing. So, that builds into my life. But anyway, so going through life, you have you have things that happen at home, and then you have things that happen at school, and you have those things that break your heart, and those moments when you have to, you either, I wasn't one to like go along with a lot of stuff if I didn't agree, but when I did, and you get that aching feeling in you that like, no, this is wrong. Um, and that's when, this whole know your value, live your values, it started early in life because you want to fit in. And if you're going through trouble at home or in other situations, you want to fit in somewhere. And I remember being in middle school and sitting at the lunch table trying to fit in with the new set of girls, and I didn't necessarily agree with, how they may have treated everyone. And then there's a time you finally stand up and then you get rejected. And then you're like, oh my God, I can't handle this rejection right now. But you know what? Your tribe comes out of their woodwork. And I am still best friends with some of my friends from middle school who were there. The people that show up in your life, they matter. They make a difference. And, have you ever done one of those life map things? Like every
Mhm.
your life. So if you've ever done a life map where it's like every point in your life where it's been like super highs and super lows, and you start looking for patterns, um, then you can see those moments when you're out of alignment. And I noticed that every time I was at a low, you can't control the environment around you. You can't control if somebody dies. You can't control what your parents do. You can't control what your siblings may do or your friends. But you know how you feel. And when you're out of alignment with your value, when you feel like I'm not enough, or like I feel like I'm being treated like crap right now. And when your values, like for me, authenticity, compassion, and respect, when they're not present, I feel terrible. And
So
especially
you could see that. You could see
oh,
that in your life map?
I can see it in my life map because every time I was out of alignment, it took me decades to figure out, and it took me several encounters of realization. But I think when the shit really hit the fan, I'm sorry, I'm probably not supposed to say that.
No,
But
that's okay.
when it hit the fan was in 2020, right before the pandemic. And I was probably undiagnosed clinically depressed. I was in a situation where I did not feel valued. Um, I was not in alignment with my values. I didn't recognize that that's what it was. I just knew I felt miserable. And when the pandemic hit and everything, got laid off and all these other things happened, I had that moment of like, oh my gosh, I've got to get myself out of this, but you can't do it alone. And I remember being on a call with this Friday night happy hour of all things. And here I'm trying to show up and, I'm fine. I'm doing great. Everyone on the call is doing great. And they passed around, okay, everyone's going to select, we're going to have an automatic value generated for you, and you're going to talk about it. And I got the value courage. And
Mm.
I was so upset. I mean, I wanted something like joy. I wanted kindness. I wanted happiness. I wanted respect. But courage, I was mad. I was like, courage. I've had courage my whole life. I don't want to have courage right now. I don't want to talk about courage. And I turned off my camera and I was going to leave. And then I thought, no, you're going to stay. You're going to stay, but you're going to leave your camera off. And you're going to get through this and you're never going to return. And I stuck it out on the call. And then I said, okay, you're going to come back one more week just to prove that you're fine. And I came back the following week and admitted, well, first I heard one of the men in the group, he started to cry on the call. And I thought, oh my gosh, I thought everyone had it together. I was crying on last week's call. but I didn't have the courage to keep a camera on. And you know what? It taught me a lot. And some of those
Mm.
people became some of my best supporters. And we together, we got through this pandemic with our Friday night happy hours. I joined Positive Intelligence. I started learning how to do the work. And when
Well,
you
before we get too far
yeah.
along to that deep into the story, let's just pause and talk about what was the story? What was the internal narration that was in your head, Susan, that was telling you that you couldn't admit how you were really feeling? What was that about?
The internal story. Well, because I was supposed to always be fine. I'm
Mm.
supposed to be fine. I'm not in trouble. I'm I'm fine. And so
And if you don't if you admit you're not fine, then we talked about being that stability, right? Now I'm unstable. Now
mhm.
I'm admitting, so I'm losing this job I've given myself to always be the stable, dependable
Yep. Yep.
one, right? And so there's a Lauren Lifkowitz. I don't know if you follow her on LinkedIn, but her whole thing is fine as a trap. And you
Ooh.
were like
Mhm.
really caught
I'm
in
writing
the
that
fine
down.
as a trap moment, right?
Fine is a trap. I'm writing that down. Yeah, fine is a trap. And, as much as I value authenticity, compassion, and respect, I was being inauthentic because I
Yeah,
was
fine
not
is a
fine.
I mean, fine is kind of a lie
Mhm. Fine
because
is a lie.
fine is choosing not to engage. When somebody says, "How are you?" and you say, "I'm fine," it's like it's like you can say that even if you're not really fine. You don't have to. It's so surface level.
Right.
It is
Right.
just so surface level,
Yeah.
right? And this is where the pleasing part of some of this comes out, right?
Mhm.
Because if I admit I'm not fine, I might be a burden to somebody else.
Right.
If I admit I'm not fine, I might make my husband feel guilty. I might make my coworker, I might make my friend, I might, right?
Right.
And I'm the one that shows up for them. I'm not the one that they have to show up and support. These are the stories that go on in my head about this.
Yeah, and it's funny because when we initially talked about abandoning self, I never associated myself with as being a pleaser, ever. And when you put that on the first thing, you're like, "Pleasing," I'm like, "I'm not a pleaser." But then I realized, you know, any of these, the way we self-sabotage, it comes through in a lot of different ways, and so then I'm like, "Well,
Mhm.
I'm gonna do a little bit of research on this." And yeah, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe it."
Well, share because not everybody has done positive intelligence, read the book, or done
Um,
some of the work like we've done. Do you want to share a little bit about the internal story we tell ourselves and the hidden lie about that when our pleaser is running the ship?
yeah, right, because you're not taking care of yourself. You're so busy taking care of other people that you're not listening to what's going on inside you. And when you cross the boundary lines of your values and for me, respect is number one. I can deal with people that I don't like. I can deal with people that are not kind. But when it comes to disrespect, I draw the line. But yet I could sit by somebody, and if you're disrespecting my friend, I would stand up more than if you were disrespecting me. And I have
Mm.
learned over the years now how to flip that. But I recognize that I could be everyone else's, um, helper, saver, fixer, but when it came to myself, it was just, I kinda put myself on the back shelf.
And I think this is so very common. I
Mhm,
really I have these conversations a lot, especially with women. And what I want to add into this for those of you that are listening is in business, in the professional part of my life,
mhm,
I didn't walk the world being a pleaser. I
mhm.
was a disruptor. I was somebody that didn't I was a total Gen Xer, Forget about that rule book. There's a smarter way. I'm going to figure it out. I mean, I was very much a very strong. Any of my old coworkers will tell you this. I was not a pleaser. When I had my first child and I became a mother, that was what lit up the pleaser side of my brain. It was like when my family expanded from just my husband and I, which we were very we still are. There's a lot of equality. When we added children into that, we fell into the same um role structure in our family that we had seen our own parents have. And
Wow.
he was an involved dad, but not like super involved in all ways. It wasn't like he was doing the shopping and the cooking and all, but I mean he did do things with the kids. And then when we added the second child, it just got worse. And so it wasn't until my daughter um wanted to be a competitive gymnast in high school, and
Mm.
she suffered an injury that took her out of the sport, and she lost her purpose. She lost her meaning. She was a lost kid at that point. Like, she didn't know who she was if she wasn't a gymnast trying to get on a team in college. And she had a total mental health event around that. And then I had, we did family therapy because it wasn't just about her, it's about the system that she's in.
Mhm.
And that was when I really realized that I had a story in my head that I had to, in my family, not in my work, but in my family, I came last and I had to put everybody else before me. And my husband didn't have that story. So he would set boundaries. My girls would be like, I want to go do da, 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 da. And he would be like, that doesn't work for me. And I'd be like, oh, all the
Mhm.
times my parents turned me down, I don't want to turn my kids down. And then I would turn myself upside down. And then I would have all this other stuff that was waiting on my mind that needed my attention. And then I would be in the middle of driving my kids 45 minutes out of the way to do something. And I would be getting so angry, right? Because I was set, that's the lie of the pleaser. Eventually you realize
Yeah.
that you are abandoning yourself,
Yep.
that you're putting yourself at the bottom of the list. It is unsustainable because damn, nobody else is putting you at the top of theirs. And
Right.
because when you don't put yourself at the top of the list, you don't model for anybody else that you deserve to be there. So my kids always saw me putting myself at the bottom of the list, so they thought that was okay. I mean, I can't even blame them for that because that's what I modeled for them. But then I felt so put upon because
Right.
I felt disrespected.
Mhm. Mhm.
But
That's
my pleaser put me in that situation.
Yep. It's
And you
funny.
can be something in one area of
Yeah.
your life or in one situation of relationships and be something completely different in another area of your life.
Right, it comes to reckoning at some point, the realization, and you're so right about having kids because I'm mother of 4, that's why I started with the youngest of 6, mother of 4, and your own personal vulnerability when something
Mm.
goes wrong with or for you can try to make the world perfect as possible for your kids, life happens. Life happens to all your kids, and they all have those moments, and you can't fix everything. But what you can do is help them know that they're heard, know that you're there. But I mean, my own kids, my a couple of my daughters have said, "Mom, sometimes you're not very kind to yourself." And wow, I was like, you do all these things for everybody, but sometimes you're not very kind to yourself. That's a realization. You're like, wow.
Well, so wonderful for your kids to say that. Stephanie, welcome. Thanks for being with us. And Stephanie said, we lose perspective of ourselves. And I think that is true. I remember before I even had my second child, my dear friend Joy saying to me one weekend, I was at her house, the kids were playing together. She had her granddaughter and I had Natalie, and we were talking, and she was like, well, when do you take care of you,
Mhm.
Rita? And I thought, what the fuck are you talking about? Like WTF? What woman takes care of herself? I
Mhm.
mean, I'm in the middle of raising a young child and working full time, and like, what do you mean? Like, how would that happen?
Yeah.
In what universe would that happen? Because I was working full time, I wanted every hour I could have with my kids.
Mhm.
I would get so angry at work when they would schedule like there'd be a big, like all HR meeting, and they bring everybody in from all around the country, and then they would want to do like 3 days from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. of activities because they had all these people. And I'm like, but I want to go read bedtime books. I want to go have dinner with my family. Like I just felt really put upon by those obligations. And I think when you are in a workplace and you feel like you are always subjugating your personal, right? It's easy to fall in the trap of letting that bleed into a lot of areas of your
Oh,
life.
it led right into the labor and delivery room of my when I was pregnant with my first child and I was in labor and delivery. I was working 80 hours a week prior to that. And I'm in the labor and delivery room and having massive contractions, and my phone rings. I worked at Motorola, so I had a cell phone before a lot of people did. My cell phone rings. My husband also worked at Motorola, and he picks up my cell phone, and he's like, "Well, we're in labor delivery right now." And I'm like, "Hold on 1 minute." I get through my contraction. I get on the phone. I talk to the person at Motorola, and then I'm like, I gotta go. I got another contraction. I hand the phone back to my husband. I was working till I had the baby.
That's
And
crazy.
but the
That's
funny thing
crazy.
is as soon as I had her, my oldest, I didn't I was like, "That's it. I'm done with the calls." And it was the first time that I didn't, I was just like, "Nope, I'm done now. Now I'm done."
You gave yourself permission to set
Did.
boundaries, not because for you
For
did it
her.
for your relationship with her,
Yep,
right? Which is that thing that Stephanie was talking about. Like,
yep.
this is us abandoning ourselves. We have to have some other person that in the mix in order for us to recognize and value and prioritize.
Yes. I think that's why I'm so passionate about self-advocacy for, especially for women, but, for anybody in the healthcare world, but, like, especially for women. I want you to have your own voice. I want your voice to be heard. I want you to respect yourself. I want you to have the best possible outcomes and not put yourself last. And if I can do anything, I partner with all these companies. I learn as much as I can because I want women to have the best possible outcomes, mental, physical, spiritual health, right? The business part is easy for me. Personal care, personal development. I want that for people because the business part, read a couple books. Like you can get the business down, but that personal development, that takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of
Well,
care.
we were talking about the World Happiness Summit that we attended
Mhm,
together last year before we came live, and this whole research
mhm.
around well-being and what well-being looks like at work. That's what you're speaking into, Susan, is this idea that we have two selves. Like, if you are still buying into that BS, like, let it go. Just please let it go. We do not have two selves. We are whole beings. We bring our
Right.
whole selves with us everywhere we go. This idea of compartmentalization is just, you may think that you're doing it, but then subconsciously, your saboteur voices are
Mhm.
just jumping in there and misdirecting you. Trust me. Trust me. We can do the work. You can do it with Susan or I. We can both show you
Yep.
that you really cannot compartmentalize the way you think that you can compartmentalize. So first of all, we got to let go of that notion and for well-being. And then once we let go of that notion and now we are looking at whole beings
Mhm.
in the workplace, people have to have meaning in what they're doing.
Yes.
And that meaning has to speak to their whole self.
Mhm.
And that is that's the foundation of well-being. And you can't have clear meaning if you can't say what you want.
Right.
If you're still abandoning yourself, if
Yep.
you're still saying, well, whatever they say, I'll just follow along, that's never really going to be well-being for you.
Right. Right. You have to stand up for what you believe in and your passion and your intentions. And it's, to me, it comes back to intentions. Um, and I stop myself now and say, why am I saying yes? Why am I saying no? And before this call started, I told Rita, I've learned how to say no, and I'm very good at saying no now. Um, but now I have to be more selective with my yeses. And boundaries is my word of the year. Boundaries, always set my boundaries right here. But and understanding why I'm saying yes. Am I saying yes? Like, how does that align with my my whole sense of purpose? You know, for me, my purpose is to value each person for who they actually are. And am I saying yes to Rita to be on this call because why? And so for me, I'm like, well, one, I want to support my friend, but two, I really want to support people and I want people
Mhm.
to know their value. I truly like at the end of the day, know your value. You already are worth it. You're already worthy. You're, every piece, I call them pieces of I, but each of us has a gift. And yes, we're whole as one, but when we bring together the collective, we're even better, which is why this International Women's Day project I did. I pulled together, I just said, I want to hear from everyone. Right now I need a lift. I need a lift. I want hope. Everyone sent in these photos and purpose statements. And oh my gosh, it was like, I'm putting them in the computer and I'm like, this was such a gift because each and every single one of you has value. And what you're doing in the world, that's the difference. And
Well,
it
and
is
what you just proved with your project and when you show, when you say, when you allow that to shine, you
mhm,
actually lift other people up. You bring
mhm.
other people
Yep,
with you into a better place. But when we tell ourselves these stories of I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, it's not my time yet, whatever it might be, and you dim your light, you are not just dimming you are dimming the
yep,
opportunity for all the other people around you. And this is why this idea of am I abandoning myself is
mhm,
so important, because if you can lay claim to your right to allow your brilliance to be seen and experienced by others, then it's just a matter of opening your heart and your mind and following where it leads you. I mean,
right.
that's how you got into this healthcare space that you're in right
Mhm,
now. Why don't you
mhm,
talk a minute about that? About because you were when I first met you, you were kind of in a quandary about all of this. And you were trying to figure out what your true north was
mhm.
and really claim that for yourself. So tell us a little bit about how you got to the place to give yourself permission to identify so clearly who you wanted to be in your professional life.
Whew. It's the listening thing, right? It's the internal listening. It's aligns with the poetry. When I started learning to listen to what was in me, I was never a poet. Like, I'm like, I'm not a poet, but for some reason it's coming through me like that. And that's how I'm expressing myself. And it's okay. And I've had a lot of people tell me, like, you should or shouldn't do this. I don't listen to the shoulds. Don't be a shoulder. Right. Um, I will, if I want to write poetry on LinkedIn, I'll write poetry on LinkedIn. If I want to just put it on my website, I will. But anyway, getting back to the healthcare thing, I started in the healthcare space because of my friend who's, she's got stage 4 breast cancer. And I, of course, wanted to help her. So I helped her with that. And then I've been in it for a few years and also did positive intelligence and some other things. But I wanted to, I was trying to figure out, okay, so when am I going to do for my business? But not realizing I had been doing it the whole time. I set up all the programs and partnerships because it's natural. Like I said, the business part's easy for me. So I'm like, okay, I'm already doing this. And then I started noticing when I speak with people about advocacy, like they understand what I'm saying.
Mm.
Yesterday, no, 2 days ago, I was at the International Women's Day event at 1871, which is a big tech hub here in Chicago. And I was talking to these two young women about how I wanted them to stand up for themselves and self-advocacy, and it was in the menopause space. And I'm like, I know you're too young for this, but I want you to pay attention now. And one of the women looked at me and she said, I wish I would have met you 10 years ago because I always thought I couldn't have a voice. Like my doctor would shut me down and I didn't know how to stand up to him. Um, and so now I'm seeing how it's all been there the whole time, Rita. Everything I've done has led to where I am now. And it's natural. It's natural because it's not me. It's like these are the gifts that are passing through me. And I am a spiritual person, and I do believe, that's why I believe God has given us all gifts. We are just like channels for it. And but hearing her say that, I'm like, you made my day, but just purely by saying that, because I realize that I'm already doing it, you know, and now I'm doing partnerships for other businesses as well. And I do my values talks and I do, these other types of workshops, but they're not these separate pieces. And at first, pieces of I were separate pieces, right? But what pieces of I really, what it is every person, place, and experience changes you. And when you enter into a new situation, you have to pull different pieces to help accomplish
Mm.
it. Those could be
Yeah.
partnerships, they could be experiences, they could be going on somebody's podcast and, but they're all pieces. I will not be the same tomorrow as I am today because I have had this conversation with you. That changes who we are. It doesn't change like the essence, but it changes a little bit. We're moved a little different. But I've learned to trust. I didn't
Well,
have a
you've
lot.
learned to
Yep.
trust yourself.
Mhm.
And this dovetails very directly with the conversation I had yesterday on the story I'm telling myself with Gary Spencer, who also was saying that the answers all are inside of you.
Mhm.
One of the ways that we abandon ourselves is we start looking outside of ourselves and we start trying to duplicate what other people are doing, replicate, take ideas. And what both you and Gary are saying in these back to back episodes, which I was not planned, but I love, is that no, you got to go inside. You
Yes.
got to know yourself. You got to start listening to and trusting your
Mhm.
own voice. If you are always looking outside of yourself for the answers, for the thing to follow,
Yeah.
you are abandoning
Mhm.
yourself because you do know within yourself, not that we can't take inspiration,
Right.
but there is a difference between taking inspiration and looking for the playbook, that we've got to follow step by step by step. That's somebody else's that they found within themselves.
Mhm. Stop trying to read every single book. Start
Yeah.
doing something with the knowledge. And it is already there. And that is the voice for me came through the poetry. It And when it started resonating, the people that tell me what I should and shouldn't do that I don't listen to, um, I have CEOs of major corporations that send me private notes and say, "I love your poetry, and it really spoke to me," right? And this is on a professional platform
Right.
because inside, the poetry is coming from the intuition, the spirit. Sometimes I don't even know if it's me. I think it's just channeled, but listen. And when you're don't read more books if you're flustered, go for a walk. Go for a walk, put on a little piano, no words. Don't ask for too much advice. Just kind of like calm, quiet, and respect.
So the answer was you were already doing it.
I was
When
already
I
doing.
when I met you and you were in that fluster, the answer was
Yep.
I'm already doing it. I just have to give myself permission to say this can be it. This can be part
Mhm.
of it. Because again, I think you were segmenting
Mhm. Yes, I thought
things.
I either had to do this or this, and I don't. I can do both. And as soon as I opened up the space to say, "Okay, I'm gonna do these partnerships in the women's health space. I'm gonna just work on women's self-advocacy, and I'm going to, open up that space. I don't have to not do one to do the other." The opportunities came to me. You know,
Mm,
then I was
yeah.
getting, "Can you speak on this? Can you be on this panel? Can you do this presentation? Can you come talk to these people? Can you run this workshop?"
And
But it
this is
was
exactly what
initial.
Gary said yesterday.
Yep.
Look, you gotta listen to both of these episodes. The same thing happened to Gary. Once he turned inward and got really clear about his values and what he
Mhm.
wanted to be about and what his intentions in the world were, and then he just started to have natural conversations with people, and people were like, "Oh, I want to be a part of that. Oh, come do this with me for you," right?
Mhm.
So this is what Susan means when she talks about authenticity. Authenticity has been misused in so many ways, but this is what she means when she's talking about operating from authenticity. It is about that self-centered, about knowing, and it's like you've got a line from your belly button coming straight up through you. It's just like a rod, right? That just says, "This is my true north. I now know my true north. And because I'm operating in my true north, people who want to be in that same space are going to find me and connect with
Mhm.
me and the right things, the trusting that it is there." When you don't feel like that's happening fast enough or whatever it might be, or you listen to those people shoulding all over you, and you start then acting outside of that, then you confuse people
Mhm.
and they don't know who you are and what matters to you, and they're not going to be as attractive to you. This idea of really centering, knowing yourself, trusting yourself, and allowing yourself to believe that you know what's best for you.
Mhm.
That's how you start claiming yourself instead of abandoning yourself.
Yeah, and when I've done some abandonment research just on, basic research, one of the signs of abandonment trauma is, chronic loneliness. And we
Mm.
have a loneliness problem. Abandonment doesn't always mean somebody left you. In some cases, somebody may have passed away, somebody may have left. Those things may have happened. But when you self-abandon as well, this chronic loneliness and sadness and, you know, e depression can set in, and we have a loneliness problem worldwide.
Well, and
So.
somatically, it will show up, right? I mean, not just
Mhm.
in depression, but, if you will start your body will start to respond to that. So
Mhm.
suddenly, if you're having migraines, if you're having, pain, a crippling pain in your body, things like this, many people it's one of my favorite things about Martha Beck talking about this, about realizing she was out of integrity. She was completely out of integrity, and it was
Mhm.
it was somatically manifesting in real pain in her body, but what she had to fix was really getting aligned to trusting herself, respecting
Mhm.
herself, claiming herself, and living in her values.
Right. And I talking earlier about the life thread and all of those things, now I can go back in my life and I can see all of the times that I was helping people with self-advocacy and how it was always in me. I remember telling somebody in college, they're like, "Well, I don't wanna do this." I go, "Well, sit next to me. They're not gonna make you do it if I'm there." Because I'm like, if you need help being a self-advocate, sit with me in this moment, and then if you need help again, let me know, but I think you can do it. And I've been doing that my whole life. Like, I can help, I can help, I can help. It doesn't have to be a bad thing, right? And so
Right.
now I can see, like, if I can give you a little bit of knowledge or a little bit of confidence, and it can make the difference between, your mental, physical, spiritual health in any one way, shape, or form. Like, wow. And it's a little piece. It's a little piece of information or a little piece of confidence or a little boost of I've got you in this moment. But I
A
believe
little piece of
I've got
community.
one of my necklaces here says believe. I got this at my retreat this year. I believe in you. But you got to do that to yourself too. I believe
Yes.
in you. I believe in you, Susan. You got to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I believe in you. And I believe that your gifts are enough. And if you hold yourself back, you're not giving your gift to the world. And the world needs your gift. And, if I can give people a little bit of oomph and they can possibly save their life or have a better outcome, man, that's pretty cool.
Well, we're going to end on that. That is very cool. This idea that look yourselves in the mirrors and say, I believe in you, Rita,
I
and
believe in you.
mean it. Say it as many times as you have to, because you do. You have gifts. You are here for purpose. You matter, and you get to claim that. You need to stop waiting for somebody else to claim it for you. You can claim it. On this International Women's Day, we want every woman listening to this podcast to claim this for herself. Look, I know we are at time. I'm just going to remind you very quickly that on Monday, I have Sharon Summerfield with me, and I'm being undermined. Now what? We're going to talk about that. That is a 5 p.m. Eastern Time episode. And then on Wednesday, March the 12th at 3 p.m., I have Misha Safran with me, who has an incredible journey around dealing with chronic pain. And she's going to talk about, am I a wilting flower? This moment when she realized that she had to change her expectations for herself and how she navigated the stories that she had about that. So great episodes coming up next week as well. Thank you for being with us, Stephanie. Thank you, everyone else who's listening. If you're in the replay, you have questions or comments, please leave them. We would love to hear from you. And I will see you again on Monday, everyone. Have a
Thank
great
you, Rita.
one. Bye.